Okay, fantastic. Welcome, everyone. This is our second talk in our Design Futures Lab workshop this week. And we are here in Cape Town, and Nirma, I think, is right now in Melbourne, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Hi, everyone.
It's awesome to have you with us, Nirma. Nirma was in our lab. I was actually trying to think, was it 2018, our New Dimensions Lab?
2018.
So Nirma was at our New Dimensions Lab, which is another lab that we run around virtual reality and augmented reality in 2018. And it's been amazing working with her and seeing she created an incredible and really beautiful project called Azimuth. And we've been just amazed to see the work she's been doing since she moved to Melbourne and started doing a PhD around this work. So I'll just do a quick introduction. I'm sorry, I'm going to look over here because I just need to read some of this, but based between Durban and Melbourne, and Nirma is a fashion filmmaker and researcher. She started as a fashion designer and then transitioned towards fashion filmography because she had so many interdisciplinary interests. And now she works with a lot of emergent technologies and directs experiences using videography, CGI, 3D printing, microcontrollers, VR, AR, and more. And I think, you know, that for me is just such a wonderful kind of meeting of all the disciplines. And I think one of the things that we've always been really excited about with virtual reality is how folks from different disciplines kind of meet in the VR space and think differently about how you can create in VR. So we've worked with, you know, architects and game designers and filmmakers and journalists, and everyone has photographers. Everyone has a really different idea about how to use the virtual space. And I think that for me, that personally is something that's really exciting about this new medium or newish medium. And it's been it's just been wonderful to work with you, Nirma, and also to see your work progress as you've really pushed yourself through this PhD. So, okay, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, and then we'll come back at the end for some questions. Welcome. I'm going to stop my video.
Thank you so much. I'm just going to start by, cool. So I'm going to stop my video as well, just because I'm sitting in Melbourne, but I have shockingly a bad internet. And I'll start by sharing my screen. You can just let me know if it's not sharing, but I think that should work. I'm sharing sound as well because I'm going to be hopefully playing a video. Okay, so everybody should currently be seeing my Google Slides screen, and I'm going to go in slideshow mode. And we've got the cover slide, and thank you so much for having me here today. So my name is Nirma Madhoo. I'm very proud to say that I am an alumni. I'm happy to be here today. So today we're just gonna look at how my practice has evolved. I think it's going to be relevant to people that are sitting in the lab today. There's a lot of fashion practitioners, I think, in the lab this round. And we're going to take a closer look at my two last fashion media projects, and then I will conclude with some thoughts about fashion praxis. So the thinking and making of fashion in our digital conditions, and consider how this may be critical and sustainable. So I originally trained as a fashion designer, and I don't know if I can hide this little app thing here. I'm not going to play with anything in case I break stuff, so I'll just leave it as that. So I was saying I originally trained as a fashion designer at DUT, so I did a national diploma, BTech, MTech, and I started teaching at DUT in 2007, where I'm actually still a member of staff. I'm just on study leave at the moment. Around 2013, I wanted to expand on my qualifications, but I chose to do this horizontally. I decided to do another master's, so MA in fashion photography at the London College of Fashion. And I then went on to launch my creative practice in 2015. So the website is there, and the images that you see on the right-hand side, I think I consolidated my focus and my aesthetic by 2015. And so if you look at the images, I do think it speaks of the work that I do. There is a similar kind of aesthetic in all the projects published from 2015 onwards. I think I've always been interested in the expanded image, and I tried to hack this project I shot in 2D. So the Iceland project, the one that you see on the right-hand side, second a middle image. I tried to hack this project as a 360. I shot 2D and in studio and location, and I tried to make it a 360 project and was not successful. I didn't understand the mechanics of 360 production. Then I saw the other Dakar by Sally Rabicane in 360. At that time, it was just on a Samsung Gear headset, so phone-based. And I was really blown away. For me, like the other Dakar was not cool. The fashion film, it was doing super well at like Tribeca and all the other platforms, but it wasn't called a fashion film. But for me, it was clearly something that was imagined and made by a fashion designer and was a fashion film. So that was an aha moment for me. And I was like, okay, I've got to do the New Dimensions lab. So I applied and I got accepted and did the lab in 2018. So for my practice, I use methods from photography and film traditions, still in moving image captures, but also computational captures such as photogrammetry. And I'm planning to work with volumetric filming this year. In terms of my processes, I wanted to say that these are very hybrid and hugely collaborative. I love collaborating with fashion designers. I'm trained as a fashion designer myself, but I don't really like taking on the role of a fashion designer in my project, although I do have to sometimes. So I love collaborating with other digital artists, for instance. So my fashion film Future Body, which I did as part of my master's work, emerged through collaboration with an MA Fashion Futures graduate at LCF, and in my time as a student there making this. The 3D room that you see in the background was also made by a teacher and designer at the LA Animation School, who I totally approached online and have never met to date. But it's really interesting how the internet enables us to create these new connections and these new collaborations. So also super importantly, and I think I can see that in all the rest of the images that are here, my creative practice informs my teaching practice. So across the years of teaching, I have supervised BTech and master's students. So if you see on the right-hand side here, these images are from projects from students I have supervised at DT. So Jessica Shuttleworth, beautiful work here. And then Kiara Gounder, bottom right-hand side. So Kiara, I supervised the master's project, and she made this amazing range of fashion artifacts that after she graduated, we ended up collaborating on Obsidian with it. So very productive kind of context. I think these methods of collaboration and making are also like decolonial in so many senses. So teaching and learning happens across like these perceived hierarchies. I feel I'm always learning from my collaborators. Okay, so with Azimuth, as I mentioned, I did the lab, and the lab actually had a focus on documentary. So I pitched the documentary idea, and I didn't get the seal of approval by the end of the lab, and I'm forever grateful to Ingrid and Stephen for giving a very honest review. They were like, okay, cool, but no, this isn't really going to work. And I think, yeah, at the time I was like, okay, great, good feedback. But now in hindsight, I just realized how valuable it is to get an honest review as well, because I would have gone off at a tangent to make something that is documentary based, but it's clearly not my medium. So I was reminded to stick with what I'm good at, which is fashion film. And I think that Electric South is so prescient in so many ways as well, because in that space, fashion has gained so much more momentum, and it's actually impossible to overlook fashion in the XR context these days. So anyway, so after the lab, I applied to and got funding from PPC Imaginarium to make a short film, which I pitched as a 360 fashion film idea. So a little bit of budget did definitely go a long way. So the production itself, you can see selection of screen grabs and images from the work. It looks at landmark brutalist architectural spaces in South Africa, and that's also linking back to PPC. So the funders, the main funders, were kind of like wanted a story that was telling the story of concrete as a material. So my theme, I chose for it to be architectural and looking at brutalism. So yeah, so the point of departure was the brutalist spaces, and then which I conceptualized as a bit of an abstracted story and imaged with fashion performances. So Azimuth was created in 3 scenes, and the first scene was imaged underwater. So as part of the lab, we were exposed to like different equipments and what they can do. And so I got a Rico Theta and an underwater casing. And so for that first scene, we mounted that on a light stand, which was anchored underwater. So literally camera on light stand. I can't remember what we used to like weigh down, possibly sandbags, maybe something else, but it had to be like held down, and then the model went underwater dressed and was just kind of like swimming and doing these kind of acrobatic movements underwater, and yeah, that's how that was captured. We shot in a small swimming pool, but also we shot in Durban Harbour. So I don't know if any of you have been there, but it's got this incredible expanse of like concrete doluses, which are actually South African invention, I believe, that serve to, I don't know, I think waves crash on there and it serves to control tides or something like that. So anyway, so we captured the model underwater, and then these expanses of the doluses, and then I composited them into this image that wraps around you. So I composited it in Premiere Pro. So the scene is like, you get a very distinct underwater and diluvian kind of effect, because we also designed this soundscape, binaural soundscape, to communicate that kind of sensibility. So it was the first time I edited in 360 in Premiere Pro, and weirdly, my challenge was actually hardware. I think I was editing from a Mac Pro that didn't have a very high spec graphics card. So these days I've shifted to a gamer spec computer, so PC, fast GPU, so editing in 360 is much, much easier. The second scene in Azimuth, we went up in the air. So this project was also like looked at elements, so air and water and solids. And so we filmed the talent, Lauren, who is this absolutely amazing South African fashion model, dancer, and artist. And really interestingly, we had somebody else book that canceled at the last minute. So we managed to book Lauren at quite a last minute thing. It was really the best thing that happened for that production. So we filmed her like rigged aerially, as you can see here in front of a green screen. We also then filmed the Steve Biko campus. Some of you that are familiar with beauty might recognize the campus, which is the brutalist structure, was designed in the 1970s, I think, or no, sorry, it was designed whenever it was designed, but the guy that designed it was a well-known architect in the 70s, apartheid style architecture. So it's very oppressive in some ways, but such an interesting space, and especially in that wing where there is this vertical jungle growing across the floors. So it was a really kind of, locating these really cool spots really in an accessible way. I was based in Durban. It was all really around me. Just a note to say that, so in terms of creating this backdrop for that scene, we sent the Insta360 Pro down a zip line across the atrium. So just in that sense, and also with Lauren's aerial rigging, I worked with professional riggers and a film crew for these 2 sequences. So you would definitely not try to do this at home on your own. These are things that must be done properly. So this sequence was also composited in Premiere Pro, and I think I only realized later, like way after the production was made, that I couldn't, it wasn't rendering properly transitions between the different sequences on 4K footage, which is, yeah, quite an interesting thing, because I think the software and the platforms are developing as the creators are also developing. So sometimes there's hiccups, we don't anticipate them. And we're really working at the edge of like technologies, I think very often in this context, which is exciting. We tried to also create a DIY stereoscopic setup with 2 Red cameras. That's how we ended up filming Lauren. So Jimmy, who's was one of the producers on board and handled all the equipment, set up like 2 Red cameras at the correct angle, and I have footage of that, but just because of time constraints and a whole lot of other things. So with Imaginarium, I was working on a time limit, and the project had to be made for exhibition by a certain amount of time, so I couldn't get into there. But the footage is there. Maybe I'll get in and work on it at some point. We ended up just using monoscopic export. And then the third scene in Azimat is where it also got like really experimental in an even more digital way. So initially the idea was to image the model inside a photogrammetric capture of the Ponte Tower in Johannesburg, which you may be familiar with. I've always been quite obsessed with, you know, those types of architecture, especially Ponte. And I managed to get LiDAR files that a Joburg company had scanned the inside of a tower. So they had rigged a LiDAR scanner, a laser LiDAR scanner on a drone, and flew the drone up the tower. And we had all these, this raw data. So I wanted to use that for the third scene. And that's actually how I met Jason. He was introduced to me as the king of LiDAR. And so he aligned the files and we looked at them, but the point cloud was too sparse, so we can use it for these purposes. But it was really interesting, you know, handling these files. It's just like so quite sublime in what it kind of like proposes in terms of scale. So Jason ended up modeling the tower in Unity, or in a 3D software, and brought it in Unity. And then I arranged the photogrammetric capture of the model at Black Ginger Animation Studio in Cape Town. So they did it as a favor to one of the producers on the project as well, who, you know, work a lot with Black Ginger, and just organized me a freebie half-day shoot for the model. And I really think, like, looking at this sequence especially, I think it's in so many ways the precursor to what I would do next. So for me, this was the new, like, working with a digital body became, yeah, the thing that I wanted to pursue. So with the next project, so this was, as I said, was like made and composited in Unity by Jason, and I thought that, like, my next project, I wanted to use more of those kinds of technologies. And also at that time, I wanted to learn about closed 3D design platform, fashion design platform, which was already like really growing exponentially at that time. So this then took me to Obsidian. So in the process, I was also kind of like wrapping life in Durban and relocating to Durban and Melbourne as a student. And so when I got here shortly after, we also had the pandemic. So lots of, I think, external factors, besides me wanting to work more in Unity and wanting to work more with 3D in terms of external factors. With COVID, we couldn't shoot people, we couldn't, you know, engage in production like we do normally. So 3D made sense at that point in time. So Obsidian was made during the pandemic, and it became even more collaborative. There was no funding, so everybody that got on board is equally an artist within the project. So myself, Jason Pons, who is a co-designer based in Melbourne, and Kiara, who's a DUT. So we were all artists on it, and yeah, so it became this metaverse world on VR chat. And to be quite honest, it started to feel like it was its own world and its own entity. Like nobody really like owned it per se. Maybe the artist that worked on it, but who owns it? I guess we could ask, does it become a kind of digital colonization? If you like, Obsidian is mine or only these people? Yeah, interesting questions, because yeah, the kind of actual context and systems that we have are getting taken into the virtual, and it's worth asking you know, how that works, and if we want to be replicating the same system in the virtual. Anyway, so with Obsidian, it drew on elements of Octavia Butler's book to imagine this VR world, and I'm just going to read the little poetic blurb to it. So Obsidian, a minor planet, a rogue planet captured by AXP 11's gravitational world, basaltic, melanated, noir, a virtual world inhabited by Symbiont and Avatar, the INA, homage to Octavia Butler's protagonist in Fledgling. Okay, so in terms of the tools, I literally learned to use Clo by working on Obsidian. So once I learned about the basic workspace, I hacked my way towards creating a very complex garment for Obsidian by using an open pattern source from Alexander Mcqueen. So the dress that you see there isn't my design. Like I said, I don't really want to be the fashion designer on the project, so I want to work with other fashion designers. And so in terms of this hack as well, I think it's quite interesting, and it's part of this whole like digital conditions that we live in. So the Alexander Mcqueen pattern is an open source pattern that I got from Show Studio. So they've got an in-house project called Design Download, and it's directed towards fashion students because Show Studio are very influential. They speak to the designers and sometimes get those patterns and upload them, and then they set little projects for students to create fashion films and projects around that they then publish on their site. So I grabbed that pattern, it came as a PDF, it was the correct format, and then Kiara converted it into an Illustrator file. I imported this into Clo, and I was able to simulate this garment that you see there. So I also really wanted to use Clo avatars because they have a really fashion look. You can customize it to an extent. I was very happy with the way I was able to create this kind of idea around the INA, which was this avatar that would exist in Obsidian. And then for Obsidian, I used like standard motion files from Mixamo. So I was at a stage where I could get into and also with the pandemic, like create my own mocap session and grab the files from them. I was also really learning, so Mixamo worked for me. And all of this work, well, like the whole Mixamo thing, we were able to create those animations and simulation in Clo and bring it into Cinema 4D. It didn't work super well when we brought it into, so it worked in Unity, but once it became real-time VR, it wasn't really working. So we ended up, so we had all these, you know, really kind of dynamic animations, but Obsidian is animated we hacked the animation within Obsidian so it would work in a real VR context. So I just wanted to say with Kiara's files, so her range of fashion artifacts that were like STL files that could be 3D printed, what were also like super seamlessly and universally importable across all platforms, Clo and Unity. So that was like a breeze to work with. I don't know if all of you know what Clo 3D is, but if you don't know, I'll just give you an overview. So it's an industry standard 3D fashion design software. So the twin software to Clo is called Marvelous Designer. I think Marvelous Designer was around for a longer time. And then Clo came around as a slightly more polished, sophisticated version for fashion design. So like other 3D software allows the user to sculpt the surface of a 3D mesh in order to create garments, but Chloe and MD, Models Designer, allow users to create 2D patterns. So in the way that we train to think, so you think in 2D pattern and flat, and then you're able to digitally sew these garments together in a really intuitive process. So once I got my head around Chloe, like it's becoming easier and easier to use it, but I also use it in a very limited way. I've actually started teaching it. I teach part-time at the university here, and students are absolutely loving it. And I think that it's just really opens up so much, and as the possibilities are a little bit limitless in what can be done with it, and we haven't even really scratched the surface of what could be done with it. So with Chloe, it's like possible to instantly visualize your design, a digital avatar. It's got a physics-based simulation of textiles, and image processing for photorealistic renders. So before, renders are understood as something that's like painful, and you've got to have all this gear, and Chloe does it. All this hardware. I mean, Chloe also requires hardware, but it's much more lighter in the way that it can create a really good render in a short time. So users can undo, redo design actions and prototype in an expanded way, and in a more diverse way as well. So in terms of body types, you can customize that avatar. When I was working with Chloe for Obsidian, it was limited in how I could customize that body. And I just had a lesson today with my students, and it's just like totally improved version. In Chloe 6.2, you can do so much more. Chloe has also loaded up like body types. They would have probably gathered data, so probably scan a whole load of like body shapes and sizes. So they'll offer you a file that you can apply to your avatar, and for example, then switch your avatar from a standard kind of more fashion figure to a curvy plus even. So this is just at fingertip with Chloe. You can also like simulate different fabrics, add surface design, and all of this doesn't generate that waste that physical toiling or marking up entails. So Chloe's application is primarily for the fashion industry. Like they sell it as a tool that helps you to cut on your sampling process and cut on your prototyping process, and yeah, sadly, like to make quicker fashion. However, it's also an application, and they are interested in creative applications for Chloe as well. And that would include fashion images, and increasingly, and very importantly, virtual and metaversal applications for new fashion propositions. I suppose like Chloe is like super relevant to many of you at the lab today. So the other platform that we use, there was like just and also figuring out interoperability. That's often like an obstacle when you're working with like there's no manuals. You have to figure out what can work, develop a workflow for the specific thing you want to do. So Jason had designed some stunning worlds in VR chat, and we chat all the time, and he showed them to me. Like in the beginning, my impression of VR chat was like, it's a bit deceptive because it's got a bit of a cartoon-like identity. But then after seeing Jason's like VR worlds, and I knew that we had to somehow design something, and that happened for Obsidian. So in terms of the environment, the procedural terrain generation was done by in-world machine by Jason. So we mocked up prototypes then of how to set up fashion installations in the virtual terrain in Unity. So the composition happened in Unity. We created assets in different platforms, and it was all brought into that terrain that became the environment in Unity. So literally learned how to use Unity through Obsidian, and Jason taught me how to use Unity. I'm still learning as we go. We use Unity Collaborate to work on the same on that same project. So he would effect changes, and if I updated it my side, then I would see his changes and vice versa. But he really did the bulk of this part of it because he's so much more experienced and knowledgeable, and published that world on VR chat. So he's also the champion of developing these metaverses or these worlds for VR chat. I think my interest with using the metaverse and platforms like VR chat is for the exhibition of fashion. I'm also kind of like deciding and realizing what it is that I want to do as I'm making work. And so in trying to explore in what ways, so in doing this, I'm trying to explore in what ways it can expand the work of fashion makers, mostly for an exhibition context. Another interesting factoid is this world that has got like photorealistic effects is a file of only 150 megabytes. I found that quite stunning. By the time it was decimated, it was just only so large, and yeah, just really amazing what you can do these days. So in terms of exhibition, we had the real-time metaverse world in VR chat in a gallery context. So we had like a tethered Oculus setup. We used Quest 2, also directed remotely by Jason, went and got the gear, made sure it worked. And we set it up for one person to experience at a time, but it's obviously potentially multiplayer. And it's really interesting because you're no longer just going and looking at fashion within the world, but you're looking at fashion with other people within the world. So it changes the dynamics and opens up the ways in which we can imagine exhibition context for fashion. On this slide as well, so this is just some of the process work, previs of how we're going to lay out the gallery. Like for me, it's really important that this experience happens, is mediated through a physical space. So that's, I'm interested in virtual and actual modalities, like in working together. So we had the VR, but we also had a physical installation with Chiara's artifacts. So basically Chiara's artifacts existed were printed and installed in the gallery space and as a physical display. And then additionally, her artifacts were kind of put on the avatar, and we created a AR installations. So the visit at the gallery, there were plinths. Sorry, I only have like the mock-up here. I was so busy, I never got to record it on my phone at the gallery, but that was just my desktop when I was developing it at home. But the gallery, we had plinths with the trigger on there. You'd go there and scan it with your phone. It would take you to a place where you could install the app. At that point, we're using Adobe Aero, which is free with Adobe Creative Cloud. And then on your mobile device, then the avatar would pop up and just spin. So it was a really fun way of understanding the exhibition, or expanding the way in which we looked at the project. Okay, so I have here now a kind of walkthrough. So it's just literally being in VR chat, taking out your virtual camera, which is just a mobile phone, in VR chat, and recording what is happening in there. So I'm going to try and play this for you, and hopefully everything goes smoothly with the sound. Let me try and get there. I think my internet is bad.
Obsidian, a minor planet, co-orbital. Obsidian, PSV J818.5-22, undetermined. Orbiting AXP 1E-1118. Magnetar, neutron star, within radio nebula F10.1-0.5. W31 HII AXP 1E-11. Obsidian origin unsure. Space velocity undetermined. Obsidian PSV J818.5-22.10. A rogue planet captured by AXP 1E-11. Gravitational well. A neutron star. Precession frequency unpredictable. Obsidian host. Gravitational well. The INA.
Just a quick note, I actually didn't mention before I played the media. Let me try and get back to my presentation quick. So Obsidian, in terms of Obsidian, the second version that hasn't been uploaded yet, but you saw those kinetic sculptures in there, and they are a direct reference to the work of Iris van Herpen. You would have seen her fashion shows with the kinetic sculptures. So just through the VR community here and doing talks, I met this artist called Aaron that works with those kinetic sculptures. So I think he's kind of learning to make them in Cinema 4D. And then so we took one of these models and brought it into Unity. That's his handle, it's Spirit Particle, and it looks really amazing. But the idea would be to then see where that can be taken a little bit further, so it's not you know, that direct a reference to the work of Van Herpen, but there's effects, I suppose, that we could play around with, VFX graphs and particle system in Unity in order to morph that into something you know, different and for the VR context. All right, so that takes us to, got like 2 conclusion slides. I'm doing okay for time. I kind of plan 15 minutes for Q&A. And so in terms of the conclusion, I think looking at a critical approach at fashion and VR, it's a much more democratic space. I mean, luxury brands are also uptaking it very, very hungrily. But digital technologies have democratized the ways in which we can make work. I couldn't imagine making fashion films like years ago, pre-digital tech, and when there's like film and all the expensive equipment. It was very elitist kind of context. So nowadays, it's much easier to access tools and platforms for dissemination for these as well. So fashion itself is in the process of being decentralized. So in the metaverse, it's no longer matters where you are. It doesn't matter if you're where you are physically. It can be Dakar, Durban, Lagos. You don't need to be sitting in Paris or London in order to make and be visible. The digital revolution has definitely changed this. I think we are all testament of this, like sitting in this lab today. But it's really important to carry on making and just be putting stuff out there like all the time. Like I never think it's good enough to just talk about stuff. Like the key is making and putting it out there. Even though if you're not happy with the end product, I'm letting go of an inherent kind of perfectionism and letting go and letting projects go out there without being 100% happy with it. And it's actually okay because it's such an experimental context. So in terms of sustainability, I think we will always consume fashion, whether it is in an actual physical world or in the virtual world, which is actually as real as the actual world. So it's not, it's not a fake world. Virtual is as real as the actual. We want to dress ourselves and our avatars in the metaverse as much as we want to dress our physical selves. So tools like Clothes 3D, of course, make the production environment more efficient as it cuts down sampling time and everything. But it's also a tool that is relatively less demanding in terms of energy consumption. Nothing is carbon neutral, of course, but I don't think there's any activity that is carbon neutral. But in relation, I think that digital fashion has a lesser of a carbon footprint. And so we see big brands, big companies already uptaking on the context. So Balenciaga has been one of the forerunners, tapping into the XR context. There was Fortnite in 2020, and just last year they created a video game called Afterworld. The image that you can see here, I think it takes you in a rave in the forest, the whole video game story, and the models look like photogrammetry, but it's actually volumetric filming. I looked into it. So that's also another really powerful tool that I think needs to be more present in XR context. I don't know if there's time to watch this. Let's just see. I think let me maybe mute it and talk to it. So it's really interesting to see how this platform is already capitalizing in on kind of digital fashion. It's called Dematerialized. I think that, I don't know about dematerialization. I think it's an attractive idea, something that's, just not material anymore. But there's also all this talk about digital being material. So I'm really interested in that aspect of it, pursuing further in my studies as well. So very commerce-based, crypto-based activity. And so if you go on that site, you'll see that it's, I was quite surprised. I mean, we all know that it's taking off, but it's really a testament to how much exactly it's taking off. So big brands have their, I think Mcqueen, Alexander Mcqueen has garments on there as NFT and as physical garments as well. So they sell it in a package. So Fidgetal, you can buy the actual sweater and the NFT sweater. So you can wear it in the physical world, and then you can also, your avatar can wear it in the metaverse. Let me try and get to the next slide. So there are, I think, a lot of job opportunities for people interested in those kind of metaversal contexts and in digital fashion. So avatar stylists, these are all new job description, concept artists for character design, avatar stylists, NFT designers for digital fashion designers, but also generative art. It's really opened up what you can do after you've qualified in fashion, or if you're a young designer wanting to diversify, if you're a designer, period, wanting to diversify. And I think the question I'd like to ask is, how much of this is fostering just another neo-capitalist system? If this kind of context and currency is used to buy Lamborghinis and whatever else, what is this actually doing, and how much of it is actually transformative? So I'm posing it as a question. I don't have the answer, but I really do think that there needs to be more voices, and voices from different people, like others, like women, people of color. So it's really important that we are able to be part of that scene and to create work on that scene, and it's more than possible. If you check out the fabricants, so the fabricants are at the forefront of digital fashion. You would have heard of them if you're sitting at the lab today. They have a side platform which is called the Fabricant Studio. Maybe I'll go there quickly and we can have a look. There we go. I know. So this is the Medium article, but this is the studio space. So you can literally go on there and get started and make NFTs and sell them. So the fabricant takes a very small portion in terms of what you create and market there. So I think they try and be ethical in their practice. I don't know, it appears as such. And so you could go there, but you can't do it all the time. So they have season 1, season 2, they launch seasons for minting NFTs. So already if you are able to design in Chloe or Marvelous Designers, you can go in and be part of that community there. From what I understand, they use the Flow blockchain, I think, in terms of crypto. Very interesting to see a lot of those places are Ethereum based when you're looking Ethereum blockchain based. But it appears that Fabricant is using the Flow blockchain and currency in order to trade on that market space. So I think that's it. I wanted to wrap at 2:15, and it is 2:45. That was my last slide. I don't have a thank you slide, but thank you for listening. And should we open up to Q&A? I'm going to stop sharing this now.
Yeah, let me just put my video back on. Hi, thank you so much, Nirma. That was great. And actually, for me personally, because I feel like I've been talking to you off and on over the last couple of years that you've been in Melbourne, but I actually didn't realize like some of the things that you were up to. So it was really great to get more of an insight. And for those of you in the room who might not know, Nirma's actually just won a grant from the African No Filter to make a different project, which she's going to be working on this year, which maybe she can tell you a little bit about later. And the Jason Stapleton she's been referring to as our very own Jason Stapleton. So all of those magical creations, I'm sure he can also talk to you in person about. Okay, any questions from the room? Yeah, go. Oh, actually, do you mind coming up here? Is it awkward? Sorry, it's just otherwise I have to repeat it and I'll just misrepresent. Sorry, Nirma, we're just going to just so you can hear.
Sorry, hi. Great work. I just wanted to know if you were familiar with the Institute of Digital Fashion in the UK and what you built with them.
Yeah, so they are also, along with the Fabricant, I think they are also like pretty much at the forefront of digital fashion, and their approach is very transformative as well. So they push the agenda for like include more diversity in fashion. They are linked to this platform called, do you know DigiGXL on Instagram? So you can follow them on Instagram. So it's like this digital community of women with an X, non-binary people, trans people. So you can follow them on Instagram, but in order to join their community, so their Discord community or whatever, I think you have to identify as one of those. It creates a safe space for others within that. And I think that one of the founders of Institute of Digital Fashion is also one of the founders of that DigiGXL platform. So they are really pushing the envelope when it comes to, envisioning an idea of fashion for the metaverse and for virtual kind of context that is different and isn't keen. They collaborate a lot with big brands as well, but they are bringing in their own voice. Like you can see that they are bringing in much more transformative angle to the way in which they are interpreting those briefs. Did I answer your question? Are we speaking about the same people?
No, it's just because it's because I know the owners of the Institute of Digital Fashion. I just wanted to know your relationship because I think I did a project for you guys at some point, Matt. It was some NFT.
Oh, right. I'm not linked to the Institute of Digital Fashion, but I do follow them and I'm keen to follow their work. So I'm, a fan of their work, but I don't know them personally. However, if you go on a Discord server. These are people that are all on there. So I suppose if I reached out, I could speak to them if I needed to. So in that way, it's it changes dynamics as well. There's no longer these hierarchies. Yeah, that's really interesting. So what did you produce for Institute of Digital Fashion?
A lot of it is confidential stuff.
Okay, all right.
But like, yeah, it was just NFT stuff. I don't personally push NFTs. Like, I still have a bit of concerns about it. But I have produced augmented reality NFTs for some fashion brands. I was just curious because I just saw some familiar stuff up there. Work.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. And if you're working with AR, there is this really amazing new platform. I don't know how new, but it's come across my radar recently from last year only. It's called Styly, STYLY.cc. And they're a Japanese company, and they're really keen on that crossover of fashion and XR, AR, and VR. You can load up an AR experience there, as well as a VR scene. I mean, it's definitely not as immersive as being in a headset, but on Styly, you can load up your VR scene and move kind of in via your like mobile device. So maybe worth for you to check out.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Styly. Yeah, we'll pop the. We're actually going to do a tool session later today as well. So we'll look at that. That's one of the tools I think on the list to talk about. Nirma, I have a question for you. Just because it was really cool, as you were sort of taking us through your progress through learning all of these tools. And I think it's relevant for a lot of the folks in the room who maybe aren't technologists or, don't see themselves as being particularly technically inclined. Like, how do you approach, like, how did you figure out Unity? Like, how do you approach those kinds of, is it through collaborations? How do you get your head around what these tools can do in your practice?
Yeah, mostly collaboration. Like, I'm not the kind of person I've had to often sit and like Chloe, I had to learn through tutorials. But once I've learned through tutorials, I package it in a way that my students are uptaking it so much more quicker. I wish I had that opportunity to sit in a class and be taught Unity, but it hasn't been the case. I've been lucky to have Jason teach me. I approach like most of these technologies with fear. I hate to say that, but so even before I went to London College of Fashion and I was working with still images and I knew I wanted to make a fashion film, I was absolutely petrified at the idea of using Premiere Pro and, like editing a film. Like, I had no idea what I was going to be getting myself into. And I remember speaking to an artist in Durban and just expressing like I was about to do this and I was just like mortified and so scared. And he said, what do you think is the most important thing? And I was just like, the technology. And he was just like, no, it's your idea. That's the most important thing. Like, the tool is going to eventually work for you. So I still approach things like fearfully. I'm going to be working with volumetric. I'm still fearful, but I need to get into it. And I think I'm going to learn more with Jason as well as in terms of Unity. And I know like really, basic things at the moment. I'm hoping working on the next project, I'll be able to deepen my skills a bit. But also it's really important to realize that in this context, you need to know so much that it's impossible to know everything in depth, and collaborate with somebody who's an expert in that, and then have this conversation, learn a little bit so that you know where you can take the tool. So it's this interesting kind of dialogue that you have with different people, even with the technology itself, in trying to create work.
So obviously, clearly the answer is Jason. we all needed a Jason. But I think apart from the Jason, and not everyone in this room can use Jason, he'll be very, very busy. But I think maybe the other thing that I really get from you is technology in service of the idea and in service of the creativity, but also that you learn these technologies through applying them to a project. So it's not just like, oh, I must sit down today and learn Unity, which then feels a little bit abstract and you're not quite sure what you're looking at. But if you're actually trying to build something, I think that for me personally, that's the way I've learned things. It's like, I need to build this thing, so I will learn a little bit of, whatever it takes to make this work.
I thought that the way in which you conceptualized the lab was like really interesting, like putting two people together to work on a project. And I think that's really productive in so many ways. So it's always easier when you also do that with somebody within the context of a project. So definitely interesting format. And yeah.
Cool. Any other questions in the room? Yeah. Sorry, come on up.
Hi, Nirma. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I have 3 questions. Some of them might be basic. Please excuse me. I don't have like intense AR knowledge. So the first one is, did you have to pay for any of the tools that you mentioned, like Flow 3D, Rhino, and all of that? Or did you find that, firstly, did you have to pay for them? And if you didn't, if some of them are on a freemium basis, can you still achieve what you have achieved with like an unpaid version? That's the first one. And then the second one is, what were some of your technical challenges when working with the garments, and how did you overcome them? And then the last one is, besides NFT minting, what other ways do you think Ethereum could be applied into your project?
Okay, let's start with the first one. You're gonna have to remind me about the other questions. It's the end of the day today, and I have very little RAM left. So your first question was around paying for applications and what do you do? Yeah, I think that some platforms are free. So for example, Unity is a completely free platform. The game engines, Unreal is also free. Close 3D is very unfortunately a paid service. And so in my case, I managed to access it on a student license. So often if you're a student, there are educational discounts that you can get through your institution having a university email address. And then, for example, yeah, I don't know, like I agree with you. A lot of the tools aren't free, and how can you produce work? Styly is free. So for that first instance of AR that I did, and I use Adobe Aero, so I'm subscribed to Creative Cloud, so that's part of the package.
Adobe what?
Aero, A-E-R-O, Aero. So Adobe, in the Adobe suite, they've got a really intuitive, easy to use AR tool. They used to be for iOS only. I don't know if they've opened up for Android, so double check on that. But that falls under the Creative Cloud kind of subscription. But now, other than that, there's Styly that's free. So I think there's always a platform that will crop up on the side that's free. So it's a question of like really looking in terms of what resources that you have, really looking for what works for you in terms of your budget. So maybe like years ago when I was doing, not years ago, like a year ago, maybe Styly wasn't visible, but now it is visible. I'm not going to use Aero. I'm definitely going to be using Styly. But also, I know that this kind of thing also entails costs. And so I'm either a student or work as a teacher. So I don't practice commercially and, churn out big dollars. So what I would do is look out for calls for applications for funding for projects, firstly. And also in the context of my practice, I've entered like competitions and like one little bit of monies that I've paid for, my gamer PC. So that's how I've been able to make way. Like you really have to improvise, and I think if you really want to make it, it's possible. Like just like keep at it and keep trying. So what's accessible and what's free, and how, if you needed to afford this, how you'd be able to make a plan to afford whatever.
All right, thank you. And then the second one is, what were some of your technical challenges when it came to the rendering of the clothing?
Okay, so in terms of Obsidian, so everything worked. In Chloe, it worked. Everything really worked. So, but moving it from Chloe into any other platform, you'd lose, textures and things like that. So it had to be retextures, shaders and everything. So it becomes like something that you've got to do again once you move from one platform to another. So we haven't figured out how to do things seamlessly, but I think it's a thing when your interoperability isn't like a strength with those kind of like 3D platforms. Other than that, I think it's just really easy to use. Chloe is updated like all the time. Every time I log in, there's an update and it fixes bugs in it. And from so Chloe is the paid one. I think Marvelous Designer also is, but a lot more people also use Marvelous Designer. It does exactly the same thing as Chloe. It's somehow more accessible. So I think it works exactly like Chloe though. So, the functions and everything, how it simulates garments is the same. So I think it's a really easy and intuitive platform. I haven't foreseen, major issues in terms of getting the garments themselves working and simulating how the textiles moves on the body. So that wouldn't be a challenge. Once you learn how to use it, like it's pretty easy to get it right. It's taking that from that platform into another platform that maybe a little bit. I do believe that Styly as a AR VR kind of application is also supports Chloe, or kind of like looks at Chloe and what you can produce in Chloe. I was planning lessons and looking for resources, and a lot of the resources that I found were for Chloe were published by Styly as well. So all the answers, most of the answers are actually online. So if you have any issue, Google it. Chloe probably has a forum post or a support page that will have the answer to your question. If you can't get it from somebody else that's a practitioner as well.
All right, and then the last one. So this one is not really about NFT because, I don't want to wrap up the room. It's more.
We had a bit, I wasn't actually in the room, but I think,
I can't hear you, Ingrid.
There's been, and this is not just in this space, I think you're probably really familiar with this too, that NFTs divide the room wherever you are. And there's a lot of conversation. It's been ongoing, and now obviously we're having it too around NFTs and blockchain and crypto and what it's actually doing. But not just in terms of sustainability, but in terms of everything, right? So, ask your question. I just wanted to give you a little bit of context.
Okay.
This is a conversation that we've been having, and I'm sure we will continue to have, because it's obviously really relevant to what a lot of folks here are doing. But there are a lot of questions and problems. Anyway, ask your question.
Yeah. So, I'm curious as to how blockchain tech can be used in your project, because I'm just like trying to do some bit of research as to the different ways that it can be applied in the kind of projects that you're working on, besides the minting of NFTs. Is that
Unfortunately,
something?
I don't have an answer for you because I've been watching the NFT conversation, but I'm not really interested in crypto or NFTs. Like in the capacity in which I work. So I'm interested in the metaverse and what it can do, but not as a monetized kind of context. I can see it happening and I observe it. So I haven't been really interested in, we've had a thought with like, let's, look at NFTs and with Obsidian, but it was never concretized. Jason, you're sitting there, maybe you more oriented with NFTs. I do know a lot of people that are interested in creating garments and selling those as NFTs, but from what I understand, it's not necessarily just fashion. Like anything can be minted as an NFT. And we saw from that Dematerial site that you could make a physical dress and a digital dress and then sell them as a package NFT. So I don't think I have an answer for you, and unfortunately it's not. I know it's happening, and if you were interested, definitely check out the Fabricant Studio and look how they operate. I think they are probably one of the more organized and maybe transparent platforms if you want to get involved in fashion and NFT. I don't really have an answer for you because I haven't tried to mint an NFT in my practice.
Sorry, Nirma. It wasn't actually about the NFT, the minting of NFTs. I was asking about the technology. Like, do you think that there's other ways we can use the blockchain ledger in the kind of projects that you're working on? Like, for instance, maybe trying to make your designs, I don't know, this is like a thought and process, like making some of that work more accessible through that ledger, but not necessarily through NFTs. Because I think like most of the time in fashion, when we think of blockchain, we immediately think of NFTs, but I think there's so many other ways that blockchain technology can be applied in fashion and the work that we're doing. And I'm just wondering if you've ever thought about that. But I'll leave you because that was my last question.
Yeah, unfortunately, no, I haven't thought about it. I look at it, but I'm really most interested in the exhibition of fashion and thinking about how new propositions for fashion and fashion film and how these kind of expanded ways in which we can create fashion and fashion media can be transformative. My ambit is more decolonial. I'm interested in like getting other voices kind of out there, and sorry, not really super keen on the technicalities of blockchain and ledger. Maybe I'm missing out on something, I don't know. And if I am, maybe I'll catch onto it soon. I don't know, what's your thoughts, Ingrid?
Oh, I find this whole topic, it's really loaded. And I don't know exactly what I feel, but I would say I feel like I don't know enough. And I also feel like I don't know. I personally feel really negative, but I also feel pretty clueless, to be honest. So I feel like every time I have these conversations, I'm not really coming with enough knowledge to properly even have the conversation. That's the problem that I personally feel. But I also, honestly, I feel like I also just don't have the headspace to even get into it because there's just so much else going on. But I do, I totally take what you're saying about like, are we just taking the worst aspects of capitalism and everything else and just, porting it into the digital space, and how can we make these spaces more open? I mean, I guess my answer to that is personally, I'm really interested in this idea of the commons and public space, and I'm less interested in ownership and colonizing digital space. I mean, that's just personally my thing. But, and this is a huge but, I also realize that people need to make money and artists need to earn a living. And as things do move into the metaverse, I don't know what that looks like. I just do not know what that looks like. So that, I guess that's my personal where I sit. It's like I want public open commons. I also want artists to be able to make a living, and I guess that's just where I sit. I feel like there's so many questions that we could have for you, Nirma, and it's been amazing to talk to you. Your work, I think, sits so squarely in the space that all of us in this room are thinking about. And it's also lovely to hear about your process, going through the lab. And I'm sorry about the pitch, but I'm so glad it.
No, that was great. That's the best thing that happened. Imagine if I tried to, and I think like if I decide on something, I'll really go for it. And I would have made that documentary and would have flopped, and it would have been a waste of everybody's resources. So the honest review, I totally appreciate. I think you and the team have like a really incredible vision, and I really trust everything that comes out of the lab. So everybody that's there is in such good hands.
Cool. Well, thank you. And thank you for joining us at the end of your day in Melbourne, and good luck with everything. And we'll be annoying Jason Stapleton with all our other questions for the rest of the day.
Oh, he's very well placed to respond to them. Thanks,
okay,
everybody.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye, Nirma.
Bye.